So, about 12 years ago, to say the least, 12, actually, yeah, about 11 to 12 years ago, 11 to 10 years ago, actually, the Mecha Sally situation began at the end of, I believe, 2011. And it lasted for about a year or so. A year and a half to be exact. Main comic and the universe spinoff combined. Almost 2 years. And despite how many times I've talked about it and others have talked about it, I think the biggest question was: did Ian Flynn make a big mistake here? You know, I mentioned in a previous video where I compared the two and how they drew Sally, or talk not drew but wrote Sally. And when I talked about Ken, I talked about how he had that old school mentality of, shock the viewer, do whatever you have to do to get them to talk about your product. And I think Ian Flynn was also instilled, I should say, with a similar mentality. But here's the thing, though. Even though both men probably took those teachings to heart, to mainly the teaching of, do what you have to do to get people talking to shock the viewers. I don't know if Ian Flynn realized, what he had done, as far as the story is concerned. I mean, we all get the idea as to why he did it. It was all part of this big plan to really not only redeem Sally for what she had been put through and wrote as in the comic in the past, but to also incorporate down the line as an end result the design we would get later on in the retcon slash reboot, whether you want to consider it soft or you don't. And, we can also understand that the reasoning from it from a story perspective was to bring the freedom fighters down to the lowest depths so that they would rise like the phoenix, rise from the ashes like the phoenix, and prove that no matter how hard things are, how bad things may look or how bleak they may look, they can't be held down. And we can also understand that this was another way for him, Ian Flynn, that is, to introduce the freedom fighters to a new generation and make them understand or get them the understanding as to why a lot of longtime fans and, old school fans like myself were fans of them and loved seeing them in the comics or in any kind of Masonic media interpretation out there. But again, you have to ask yourself, did he make a huge mistake here? Did he make a mistake by going the route that he did with the Mecha Sally story? And I think, honestly, again, I've mentioned this before, but in my opinion, I think he did. I mean, I could understand if you wanted to go with it for at least maybe 6, 12 issues a year at most, with the main comic as the focus. I can understand going that long and then, restoring her, bringing her back on the side of good. I get that. I can understand that and accept it. But, when I look back at why he did it and how long he was planning to go with it as a whole, even with the goal that she was supposed to originally be restored in 250 and then still continue the story, the aftermath after that up to 300, issue 300 that is, still it makes you wonder, if he made a mistake, if he made a huge massive mistake, because when you really get down to it, I think if you go and you look at the IDW Metal Virus arc, despite the mixed reaction that story gets, positive and negative, I should say, good and bad, that right there is a prime example of, in my opinion, certain writers maybe not being, used to or not being able to handle on a regular basis the ability to write long-term storylines. I mean, I get the fact that, the Metal Virus arc here in IDW was originally meant to be in Archie Sonic. That was the initial plan. And that one of the main characters, focal point characters in the book besides Sonic, would be Bunny because of how she is. So I can get and understand that. I can get and understand that, but you know, when you look at how long the Metal Virus arc, drug out for, or was dragged out for, I should say, in the main comic alone, it's no wonder people, even though they would be reading it and maybe giving certain issues and moments in those issues positive reviews, still it started to become very repetitive. I mean, sure, you would have a moment here and there where a semi-major Sonic character would be infected and we'd have to wait to the end for them to be restored, but still it's one of those situations to where, like, you wonder, was Ian Flynn trying to do too much? Was he trying to basically create his magnum opus to the point that he didn't realize he was becoming repetitive in his actions, with a few exceptions here and there? Because when you draw a comparison of this to the Mecha Sally arc, it's very similar. I mean, despite a few moments here and there that got people talking, you know, the Mecha Sally arc, for most of it, was rinse and repeat, especially when you separated the Freedom Fighters into three separate, or not, well, yeah, basically when you separated the initial characters, the initial Freedom Fighter group, or what was left of them, into two different groups, and then you added in the Secret Freedom Fighters as a third group. And with the main trio going after the Death Egg and going after Sally to rescue her and restore her, you were basically getting rinse and repeat. I mean, sure, a few times here and there you'd get something different, to get you talking. And as I've mentioned before, I think the more interesting groups out of that trio of groups that were made were the Secret Freedom Fighters and Team Freedom, because they had more character development. They had more things interesting going on where they were all involved in than what we had with Team Fighters, because Team Fighters was basically rinse and repeat. That's what it was. It wouldn't get interesting towards the end, or until the end, I should say. It wouldn't get interesting till the end. And even then, it was far too late, because I think, in my opinion, people started to lose interest. It's like now you suddenly decide towards the end to pick it up. You now decide, oh, here's the way that Sally's going to get restored, and yet nothing comes of it, because you don't realize that maybe going as long as you have, not only drove maybe some readers away or fans away, to the point that even if they still got the issues in the mail like I did, they would basically wait till it was all said and done to look them over to see what maybe all the hubbub was about and everything. Still, and also, I should say, not still, but also the fact that planning this out. Look, as I've mentioned before, on paper it looks good and everything, but you have to always be ready for the unexpected, and to continuously still do this, not realizing that Sega's going to step in and say, "Hey, we want you to dedicate one of the main issues of the story of the comic series to the Olympics," or you know, or the fact that you have this lawsuit going on behind the scenes, to where you basically have to edit, in progress, almost in progress as it's happening, edit, re-edit, take out and re-edit, take out certain things that you initially wanted to keep in there. You have to me, planning out to do a long story arc, I think that's great. That's your end. If your end goal is to reach a certain, end game, a certain pivot of the story in the conclusion with this, with your overall planning, that's fine. That's no problem. But you always have to have a preparation. You always have to have a plan B. And as I've mentioned before, I think Ian Flynn didn't really have a plan B until, the lawsuit started to really affect what he was doing in the book. And that's when he had to be like, oh, great crap. I have to change things up in this endangered species portion of the book, just so we can avoid any legal issues and all that from this former head writer. So to me, when I look at the Mecha Sally arc, was it a mistake for him to make it? Was it a mistake for him to not only write it, but to write it for so long? I would say yes. I think if he would have kept it, okay, let me correct myself. I would say no, it wasn't a mistake to write the story, but it was a mistake for him to continuously keep it going for as long as he did. If he would have just focused on it being in the main book, and going for at least 6 to 10 issues at most, I think that would have been fine. That would have saved him and all of us a lot of headaches. That would have saved him and Archie Comics and Sega a lot of headaches. But Ian Flynn's a very ambitious guy. When he sets out to want to do something and accomplish it, he's going to do it. Even if it does go so long that it bores, a lot of fans to tears or drives them away to the point that they won't come back until it's done. The same thing, unfortunately, I have to say with the IDW Sonic comics. I mean, I read a lot of the trade paperbacks that Frank Hill gave me, and even though the Metal Virus arc started out good, it got repetitive. A few moments here and there, like I mentioned, stuck out and got me thinking and wondering, okay, why would they do this? Why didn't this character avoid being infected and this and that? But yet afterwards, it was all rinse and repeat. I mean, I even mentioned that at the end, just like with the Worlds, Collide situation of the Mega Man Sonic crossover initially, he missed out on a huge opportunity here in the idea to make the conclusion, the finale of the Metal Virus arc interesting by having all the infected basically gather together and start to merge. Like basically the virus starts to kind of stack them together into one big giant virus-like monster, which is kind of like a slime blob-like monster that just is using everybody as the arms and the legs. And he missed out on an opportunity doing that. Same thing with the Worlds Collide, when you had the roboticized masters of what was left of them. You could have easily had them all merged together into one big roboticized master robot that would cause conflict with Sonic and Mega Man of whether or not they have to find a way to save them or destroy them. If you catch my drift. But again, he, the Metal Virus arc started out good, it had its moments, but still was rinse and repeat and was driving a lot of fans away because it went on too long, and it was just the same old thing, issue after issue, with a few exceptions here and there. Same with the Metal Virus arc. Well, not Metal Virus, but the Mecha Sally arc, I should say. The same with that. So the question is, should Ian Flynn wrote the Mecha Sally arc and even the Metal Virus arc for as long as he did? Or should he have, cut them short? Like, basically give himself a goal of like, okay, I want to get all this in. I want to get these certain parts in as soon as I can. And then get to the conclusion, which could be just within the span of 6 to 10 issues. Should he have shortened it? Because I think it would. I think if he would have shortened the Mecha Sally arc, like I said, to 6 to 12, maybe 6 to 10 and maybe 12 issues, that would have saved him and everybody else behind the scenes a lot of headaches from a legal standpoint. And I think if he would have done the same with the Metal Virus arc, it would have saved, fans a lot of headaches from constantly having to read every issue and seeing the same thing happen over and over and over again and being driven away. So to me, I think if I'm Ian Flynn, and again, like I said, he's an ambitious guy. When he sets out to want to do something, he's going to do it. If he feels this needs to be a certain length of if this story needs to be a certain length of issues, he's going to go for it. Whether or not it's a good idea or isn't. So to me, the question is, do I think he should have did the Mecha Sally arc for as long as he did? No. Do I think he could have done this story within the span of 6 to 12 issues? Yes. He still would have gotten everything done. He could still do the story, which is good. Could have done it, focused on what needed to be focused on, and within the span of 6 to 12 issues, been done. The same with the Metal Virus arc. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion on it. What's yours? What do you think? Do you think Ian Flynn should have, kept it going the way he was going originally on both sides of the comic front? Or do you think maybe it would have been best if he would have just shortened it maybe to 6 to 12 issues at the most? What are your thoughts? Comment below, live chat during the premiere. Super thanks will be enabled afterwards. Super chats and super stickers will be opened during the premiere. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Because again, if I'm Ian Flynn, and like I said, the guy's a very ambitious dude. We all know that. When he sets his eyes on a certain goal, he's gonna do whatever it takes to accomplish that goal. But what do you guys think? Do you think he should have, kept it the way it was, just kept going with what he originally planned? Or do you think he should have shortened them to a more decent length of issues? Like 6 to 12, maybe 6 to 10, or 6 to 10. What are your thoughts? Comment below, like I said, super thanks will be enabled. And until next time, guys, I am out.